Good morning. Leading off our discussions today is a very distinguished global futurist and renowned international keynote speaker. With an illustrious career spanning IBM, WordPerfect, Novell, and Gartner, he brings unparalleled expertise in emerging technologies and innovation to the forefront. As the founder of S2 Intelligence, he's advised multinational corporations, governments, and academic institutions worldwide, shaping their strategies in the ever-evolving landscape of technology. Today, he will enlighten us on the future of artificial intelligence, offering unique insights and navigating the forefront of this transformative field. So I was told to ask for a warm and energetic introduction from Dr. Bruce McCabe. Bruce.
Thank you. A lovely introduction. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. It is such a privilege, and it's wonderful to be in such friendly company. Ladies and gentlemen, artificial intelligence will be the #1 driver of change and opportunity through the next 20 years. The #1 technological driver of change and opportunity through the next 20 years. Now, there's a big statement to start a presentation with, so I better back it up. I'm going to spend 45 minutes trying to back it up. I want to show you how big it is. I want to expand your thinking beyond what you've seen, because you've all had a chance to play with ChatGPT this year and get a taste of it yourselves. But I want to get you way beyond that, to get a taste of what's coming and what it might mean, and get you thinking about that. Mostly, I want to get you thinking about opportunity today. We're going to get into some of the negatives in my presentation. I'm going to hang around all afternoon so we can deal with the negatives one-on-one, because there are plenty of those too. But before I start, a quick word on my methodology. Futurism. We can't predict exactly what the future holds. No one can. If I could, I'd be out there playing the stock market right now. I'd be flying one of those jets I just saw and enjoying myself, right? It's a hard business. So here's how I do it. And it's a little different and it involves a lot of hard work, but I love what I do. I basically go and spend time with scientists, the people who are building our future. So all my legwork in between all of these presentations and all the rest of it is knocking on doors at Stanford and MIT and Harvard and Cambridge and different universities around the world to see if they'll let me into their labs and give me some of their time so I know what they're working on. And then I can turn into stories for you guys. And it's a pretty good strategy for life. Hang out with people who are a lot smarter than you. It gets you a long way. So here are some of the people that contributed to this presentation today. Everything good, anything you like in the next 45 minutes, is through the generosity and the goodwill of these people who gave me an hour, a couple hours, sometimes a day in their labs to get me educated on what's coming. All the mistakes, they're mine. That's how I operate. It's imperfect and I do make mistakes, so take me to task. Let's learn together when I'm finished. But I can share with you a vision of what they've shared with me. So let's start small with what you know. Co-pilots. ChatGPT is a co-pilot of sorts. The future is any co-pilot you want in your job. I'm going to start with just a little metaphor and I'm going to build on it. Imagine you work for an insurance brokerage and you're a new graduate. You know nothing about business. You've got this job selling insurance packages to commercial enterprises, and they send you to Savannah, maybe from Chicago or New York. What's a good employer do? They give you a mentor, right? Let's call this mentor Kate. Think of her flesh and blood, right? A co-worker who's going to come with you on your sales calls to go and see this great new client or prospective client, Hyundai. We're trying to sell them all the liability insurances and all the asset insurances and all those sorts of things. She comes with you on appointments to Gulfstream and also to the smaller people that you've actually already got on board as clients. She sits in on your sales calls listens to you, gives you advice on your sales technique, gives you background on every client, the history here, gives you background on Savannah and maybe the different way things are done around here and the friendlier way things are done around here and maybe some of the manners you should show when you're in these appointments. She then goes further than that. She actually participates in the meetings with you as another voice in the conversation because she's coaching you and mentoring you. She has a history of the company. She has a history of all of those clients. And then when you're asleep, she keeps making the follow-up calls for you that you need done. She goes and writes up the contracts for you while you're asleep or on vacation or ill, keeps going, in fact does all the work that you wish somebody else could do for you to help in that sales process, and remembers every word that was ever said in every one of those sales calls for the rest of your career. That's a co-pilot, right? And you know, of course, that Kate, that I called her, is the AI in your phone. That's not 10 years away. That's not even 5 years away. That kind of fully conversational, fully knowledgeable capability in your phone as a co-pilot is far less than 5 years away in a whole bunch of contexts. So I want you to go away from here today and actually think about what co-pilot do you want. And the way I want you to think about it is by thinking about what do you hate in your job that you want to do less of and what gives you joy in your work that you want to do more of. That's a really nice way of working out where your co-pilot will be. Now, why am I so confident with that? Let me just build you something very quickly. The scientists I talk to are all trying to make AIs learn the same way we do, like babies do. We're teaching them, and this is the big breakthrough that happened in 2012 that's shaped everything that's happened in AI since, this whole revolution. We now have AIs that learn by example. Instead of by typing 1,000 lines of code to teach them how to do something, you just show them examples. That's the breakthrough. It's as simple as that, one line. That's what's going on in the world today. So, today, you can look at ChatGPT or any of these large language models and you know they already know quite a lot about insurances, to use our little story and continue it, right? In fact, everything there is to know can be found that way, and it's going to get refined. Add your company knowledge to it. So it's a supervised training data set. We can do that now. And of course, everything about selling learned online. In fact, they read everything written about everything online, right? That's what large language models do and will continue to do. So they can contextualize your conversations, and they're getting better. What they're not doing yet, but will do soon, is watch every video ever published on any subject and learn from those as well. So this is multimodal learning. They will also embody physical models of the world. So most AIs don't do this, but every baby born does this, has embodied within a basic understanding of cause and effect, that if you get to the edge of a table, you probably don't want to go a little bit further because you'll fall off. Understanding those aspects of the physicality of the world, we're going to build into the AIs to assist their learning. Scientists I'm meeting are embedding emotional models of learning. So they can look at you and understand your emotions and then accelerate their learning that way because they understand your reaction. Others are embedding experiential models of learning. So this is an AI learning how to handle a cube just through trial and error. See what happens with my fingers? I drop it. Don't do that again. Do it differently. Within minutes, it's doing a Rubik's Cube and actually solving the thing. Solving by experiencing the world like we do. Cameras are getting switched on so they can learn through vision. Audio is getting switched on so they can listen to your meetings, all of your meetings, all day. Conferences like this, all day, and learn from them. ChatGPT got those two features switched on just a couple of months ago. You can show it images and then talk to it about those images now and see what its reactions are and what it learns, right? These are modes of learning. It will remember every experience and everything it watches forever, unlike a human. We kind of max out at about 100 years. These keep going. And it'll do something which no AI does today, but very soon they will do, and that will be to ask you questions to fill in the gaps about what it doesn't know yet. So it'll know a little bit about what it doesn't know, and it'll get curious, and it'll ask the question. What we're seeing today with your ChatGPTs is about 1% of what's coming. 1%. And I'm starting small in this presentation. So let's think about some co-pilots and just use a couple of examples to frame it out. Here's some real ones. So at Shinjuku Station in Tokyo, Here's a guy, he hates when tourists come up and they speak a dozen different languages and he has to go get a translator. So now this universal translation is done on the screen for both parties, both audio and written on the screen as they talk, because it solves that nasty part of the job so he can get back to customer service and serving people their tickets for their trains. It's a co-pilot. It solves that problem. What co-pilot do you want? Who here likes doing social media monitoring to see what people are saying about your company? I hate it. Do you hate it? Do people in the marketing departments here hate it? Most people do. But there are hotels out there now using AIs to do all that for them. Now that's today's AI. Tomorrow's co-pilot for the marketing person who has to do that drudge job of monitoring all of that is the AI that not only monitors everything said about your hotel or company, but everything that's said about all your competitors, everything that's said verbally through your contact centers, online, every other transaction at the sales desk, at the check-in, and suggests changes to the services and suggests responses that you can write online as well. That's the co-pilot for the marketing guy. So I'm giving you a sense of scale, and we're just talking about personal assistants here. Here's one I saw a few years ago, which I kind of like, Judge Analytics. It's for lawyers. So your attorney's in court, and you want to know what probability a particular motion has of passing with this particular judge. This AI co-pilot goes and munges through everything ever written by that judge and helps frame the right wording and the right motion, because you're repeating the judge's own words they often use in their rulings, for example, when you're making the motion. It's taking a whole lot of research away from the lawyer. And here are two little favorites that I love. So this cop in the Netherlands, his cold cases are being prioritized by an AI, a little co-pilot. Now you think, that's immensely complicated. How would an AI today be able to do that? But all it does is takes all the digitized files, and there's lots of files, right? It's a terrible drudge job for that detective. Takes them all, learns by example which ones are more solvable based on case histories when we've pulled them out of the cold case files. And it turns out that there's a whole lot of patterns which suggest those cases where there's most likely to be DNA. So they're more worth revisiting than others. And it floats them to the top, prioritizes the work. What co-pilot do you want? It's a legitimate question because you're going to have it. And then my very favorite, nurses. I talk to a lot of nurses, to a lot of medical conferences. Nurses hate all the documenting they have to do all day. It takes hours and hours and hours. All that charting and documenting per patient, it's non-negotiable. It has to be done. But what they love, what brings them true joy in their work, true joy, is the FaceTime with patients. They want to do more of that and less of this. Now, there are about 6 different companies, I'm going to mention a couple of them later in the presentation, who are doing full audio, listening in to the interactions between nurses and patients, and physicians and patients, writing up all of the case notes, and then the nurse or the physician just signs or edits and approves. If we can save this nurse, all nurses, just 20% of the time they currently spent documenting, and a lot of them do it in their spare time after their shift, on their own dime, just 20%, that's a $55 billion dividend in the USA alone, just that. Or it's $55 billion worth of time with patients, any way you want to look at it. Is that big? Is that a co-pilot worth having? It's amazing. But I want you to think bigger. A lot of you start to think about job replacement about this time in my presentation and unemployment. And I can tell you that in most cases, while this is a highly disruptive phenomenon we're going through now, and I don't want to talk down job disruption, a lot of people do lose their jobs and move around, the overall effect is not going to be to reduce employment at all. It never has been in human history. We have a little fallacy we come back to. It's called the lump of labor fallacy. Economists call it that. And it's this idea that there's a fixed amount of work out there, so if machines do more of it, we'll do less of it, because there's a fixed amount. But it's a fallacy because there's never a fixed amount of work, is there? And what happens when we get a nice new productivity tool in our office that does more work? We do more work too. We always do more work. That's why we have GDP growing all the time. We're doing more work every day because of computers and AI. The best AI deployments, the ones with the most opportunity, are force multipliers. We tend to use these technologies to do more for us and therefore make more money, and we'd end up still working 50-hour weeks, sadly, but that's human nature. So think of this as your future, because most of the deployments that matter will be force multipliers. So here's one that's available today. There are dozens of companies that will sell you an AI which is fully conversational now, really good, almost indistinguishable from a human, which will make calls for you, make sales calls for you. So you can have 100,000 sales reps now, right now, getting out there and making calls on behalf of your company today. That's kind of a scary thought because we're going to get flooded with a whole lot of traffic, but we can do that. That's a force multiplier for our insurance sales rep that we talked about earlier on. Other people, it's about 6 companies, are doing this in medicine, and this is a bit more positive. So they're doing outbound calls so that anybody that comes through a hospital or a clinic gets follow-up calls with a fully conversational AI. How's your pain today? It's not 1 to 10. Describe it for me. How's the follow-up? Have you taken your meds? Have we followed procedures? You know, what are the things we can do proactively for customer service now that we could never do before because we never had enough people to do it? Teaching. The classroom today, the AI debate is all about plagiarism. How do we control it? What do we do with this stuff? Let me frame it differently, and you'll understand the future of education. What if you, as a teacher in this classroom, had a teacher's assistant, a human one, for every student, right? Never going to happen, but imagine. What would you do with that? What would you do if an AI gave you pretty much that capability? So every student gets a lesson plan. Every student gets customized tuition. That's a force multiplier. What about this student here? He's obviously smarter than the others. He's looking at airplanes and SR-71 Blackbirds. He'll be working at Gulfstream before you know it, right? He needs an accelerator program. But most of these kids have to be held back by necessity into something closer to the mainstream of where the classroom's at. AI, we haven't begun the journey for how we're going to use it in education to be a force multiplier for teachers. A quick one in medicine, just to finish off on this. Way back, the first scans and technology. This is an AI doing heart segmentation analysis. So if you're a cardiologist or you've ever had one of these, you go in, your cardiologist runs ultrasound all the way around, and they do this, and about 40 minutes later, they'll write a report for you before you leave the practice. Well, AI will do that in 10 seconds. Now, cardiologists got very frightened when they first saw that. That was actually the first FDA-approved AI of scale in this country. Amazing. Joint venture between Stanford and Cambridge. And worth about $2 billion as soon as they got it out there, right? Because, hey, it's better than any cardiologist alive. So radiologists and cardiologists and oncologists all said to me about 6 years ago, oh my God, I'm going to be out of a job. That's how they used to think about it, right? Now, has anyone seen on the unemployment queues a whole lot of cardiologists and radiologists? Do you know demand for their services has gone up? And demand for their services has gone up where they're heavily deploying AI. Why? Because they're seeing more patients. Many, many more patients, and they're spending much more of their time on the people that need their time who are actually really, really sick. Same goes for health assistants. You might not be able to see that very well, but there's a health assistant, a co-pilot for all of us called Babylon. There's a bunch out there, which will help you diagnose your own illnesses, right, with a chat. Now, initially when that came out, lots of resistance from physicians in the UK. Lots of doctors going, you can't do that. They could see the threat. But in fact, it's driven more patients into the NHS system because people are more interested in their health. And then at the end, if it's serious, it says, you better go and see a doctor. It's increased the catchment. And over in Hungary, in Europe, of all places, Hungary, they've done something interesting with dermatology. So you can do your own spot diagnostics. I've got a new spot on my arm. Is it a melanoma or is it harmless? Well, I can use my phone, but they've tapped in to the healthcare system. So the phone does the first triage, and then if there's anything anomalous there at all of it goes up and is seen by human eyes. Dermatologists, part of the health system, they scan them. And anything they worry about, they go, you better come in, we'll have a proper look at you. Dermatologists are happy, fully employed. You know what? They're seeing so many more patients than they ever did before because no one ever checks their skin properly. Now this app does 95% of skin diseases. And its turnaround time for medicine, for the actual patients, is 10 times faster. It's cheaper for the whole health system. We've increased the catchment. Okay, I labour the point, but you get it, right? Force multipliers of where it's at. Where can you, when you go back to your offices, where could you use AI to multiply what you do 10 times, or 100 times, or 1,000 times? Other people out there getting very excited about AIs from the point of view that maybe we could just get it to run the whole business. And there's literally a challenge out there which says, and it's called auto-hustling, I love this term, right? I just want to give an AI mission to go on the internet and make me $1 million, and I don't care how it does it. And we're getting kind of close, right? So the future that I want to paint, and I just have a bit of fun with this idea, but the future is that AI will create whole services for you, and in some cases stitch together whole businesses for you. So in the legal sector, one of the early pioneers of this was a gentleman who created Do Not Pay with AI. So it's a combination of AIs. It's got the chatbot to talk to you, and basically if you think you're due a refund, you go here and you just talk to it about what happened. My plane sat on the tarmac for an extra 2 hours and it was delayed and I think I should get a refund. And then it goes away, having had a chat with you, and looks at all the relevant legislation or regulations for the airline, for the state of Georgia, for your city. If it's a parking fine, it does it for all kinds of refunds. Then it drafts the letter for you, then it sends it, and then it gets you a refund. Yeah. I love it. There's a whole business there, and it makes money for this guy while he sleeps. And it's just AI. Auto-hustling, right? Here's another one. WeDivorce, self-guided divorce. All right. I saw this a few years ago. I don't even know if they're still around, but it's like crazy stuff, right? But legal services are full of examples where you can take lots of things you go to an attorney for, and you can automate it. Review this contract. You can do it as an online service, make money while you say. Legal services are full of ideas for this stuff, and so is your industry, right? So what service can I create that's purely AI-driven? I always show this. My poor darling wife travels with me over there. We've been married 32 years, so this is not a you know, we're happy. A couple of weeks ago, ChatGPT opened a store where you can build your own ChatGPT on any other ChatGPT. Okay, they claim a couple of million people have already done it. I don't know what the real numbers are. We won't know, but there's a lot of people. And you don't need any technical expertise whatsoever. Go and play with it after this if you want. Get on there. And here's a few examples. You might not be able to read them. They're very small, but there's lots of little mini ChatGPTs for individual businesses. You could do one for your business tomorrow. My favorite down here is the Tattoo GPT. So somebody who has a tattoo business got ChatGPT involved so you could do the design of your tattoos, and then at the back end it'll tell what's involved, have a chat about it, and that'll obviously front end the service to their business as well. And then the fantasy here, but it will be reality, is that maybe there's a young lady in Savannah who's really interested in motorcycles, and she's designing custom parts in her bedroom, right? And the AI she's using, this is stuff that happens today, creative work. It's hallucinating different parts and options for her, but it's also liaising with other AIs around the world that are really good at the physics, so we can look at the safety, we can look at the mechanical loads that are on this part, we can look at what materials choices should be made, in this case titanium, and then actually go out and talk to other AIs that will do contract 3D printing in titanium and negotiate the contract at the back end based on delivery times and all those sorts of things. This is kind of the fantasy. This isn't here yet. This is probably 10 years off, but it's sort of a vision of where we're going. AIs talking to AIs. Quick time check. How are we doing? All right. So let's go bigger again. Let's now talk about when AIs do talk to AIs. And let's show you some examples of where the really big opportunities lie when we think of AIs as systems. of swarms or hives. Very loaded words, aren't they? Kind of negative words out there. But let me show you some good ones. Let's just start with robots. You can have any robot you want as well. This is one you can buy today from Boston Dynamics. Very capable. You can have a fleet of these in your warehouse. Take 60 kilos, carry it around. Does amazing things, right? Robots like that will become quite commonplace in industry. They will also become softer. So a lot of those metal parts will become a bit more like us with tendons and muscles. So we're working through soft robotics, which makes them safer to work around, really interesting. They'll become much more engaging. So this robot learned to smile by looking in the mirror. It has about 50 muscles in its face, and it experimentally learned what a smile was and how it should smile. But more importantly, it learned to smile by looking at you and working out when you were about to smile, and then it smiles first, because it's got that emotional model that we talked about. Now, Hod Lipson created this in Columbia University, and he said to me, why do we want to do that? Because when a robot smiles after you, that's imitation. But when it smiles just before you're about to smile, that's engagement. So they're going to get real engaging as well. But we focus on the hardware, and hardware is expensive. AI gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and is almost free, ultimately, with much of what I've been talking about today. So the power is in the software and systems of software. Let me show you a couple of examples to sort of drive this home. This is a favorite one of mine. So there are some robot boats running around Amsterdam right now to collect trash. So it's not something you think about all the time, but it's a simple robot. The hardware's nothing. It's a boat with a couple of controllers. It's the software that matters. But there are a bunch of these boats, and they're learning the canals, right, in Amsterdam. Really cool. It's beautiful and elegant how they learn the shapes and where they're going. But that's not what's important. What's important is what one learns, they all learn. So here's the map that they drew together of Amsterdam. And here's how they conceptualize how quickly you can make pickups of trash and bottles and everything around the city at nighttime, at daytime. What happens when there's a blockage in Canal A and not in 1B? What happens on Saturday nights or any given Sunday when people are watching NFL in the McCabe household? There's a whole bunch more bottles over there. Or maybe at Christmas or New Year's or Thanksgiving, the behaviours are different. We should pick up the trash differently, do more trips on the western side of the city. That is what's called a self-learning system. And it's great because it optimizes a very, very expensive system of trash collection and uses fewer assets to do the same job. Now let's expand out. Here's a very simple robot in US hospitals being deployed today. It's called a Moxie. Nurses love it. All it does is fetch and carry. That's all. That's it. I forgot the sponge, I forgot these meds, and it goes and gets them because nurses spend so much time doing the administrivia, running around getting little bits and pieces they forgot to pick up. That's all it does. But what one Moxie learns, the others learn. So, you know, Nurse Bruce on pediatrics, he's the laziest nurse ever. He's on shift every Friday. He forgets stuff. Let's just post a robot. One of the fleet will go and just wait there because we're bound to be asked to do something, right? If we get into vehicles, we see even bigger examples. Who feels uncomfortable when you hear that they took out the safety driver in robot taxis in San Francisco and they're operating without a safety driver? Feel a bit uncomfortable about that? Feel more uncomfortable when you know they had an accident and someone got hurt pretty badly and they have to shut down one of those services, but they're operating services without a safety driver. How do you feel about this then? When you see, and this is a real example, this has been out there for years. There's about 70 different companies doing this. This is a real run across the United States. Does that make you feel uncomfortable? The reason we feel uncomfortable is we think of these vehicles like this. All the radars and lidars and sensors are like this, and if one of them fails, it's going to cut us off at the knees. Okay? But the future is not that. The future is this plus every vehicle knowing what every other vehicle's doing and seeing all day, all over the city. So if someone blows a red light on River Street here or on Martin Luther King Boulevard, the other vehicles know, slow down. This is going to become as routine as ABS and brake assist and all those things you're seeing on all the new vehicles today. It'll take some time, but populations of vehicles are coming which will all know what all the other vehicles are doing, just like those trash collecting boats. And it'll be really safe. It'd be like an internet of vehicles which self-learns and adjusts. And if one vehicle encounters a patch of black ice on one corner in Colorado at one time of year, it'll remember that, and every other vehicle in the United States will also know that that corner can be dangerous on that day at that time of year for black ice. Long-term future. But we don't need very much hardware to make a big difference financially. We don't even need to take the driver out. We don't need to do any of that. We just need the software. So the head of computer science at MIT, a lady by the name of Daniela Rus, one of the smartest people I've ever met, her and her colleagues did an experiment on taxi cabs in New York, and they used real data. And they said, how many vehicles do you really need if it's a self-learning system? If they all have a little bit of AI on board, like today's AI, nothing special, and the AI talks to the sat-nav and knows where the vehicles are, and just directs the drivers to pick up or wait somewhere. In other words, it's not the drivers randomly saying, I'm going to wait, in Greenwich Village because I like that, or the system is sort of talking to them and saying, you should be over here because we get a lot of pickups over there or drop-offs and so forth. Turns out, instead of 14,000 yellow cabs, you could do the same service levels, and here's the simulation with the actual data. You can do the same service levels with 3,000 vehicles. That's an 80% efficiency dividend on transportation. It's waiting to happen. And I think cities like Singapore will be leaders in this. We're going to see some interesting things happen on a precinct basis, like ports, and then we're going to see it happen on a citywide basis. Now, you're a logistics hub. Your airport matters, and we'll get to the port in a minute. Your Gulfstream people are going to benefit from the fact that every one of those vehicles you see in the left-hand picture is becoming roboticized, or at least AI-enabled, so they all self-learn. So all the vehicles at Heathrow Airport and Gatwick Airport are becoming roboticized. Why? Because they all need to be at the plane at the right time, at the right moment. It's nothing to do with getting the drivers out. It's all about increasing the number of aircraft you can put through the airport. Similarly, a whole bunch of people are working on little robots, cheap ones, that you can put inside that jet to go and inspect all those fan blades. Not to get rid of maintenance workers, but you can do more maintenance. Improve the reliability of those aircraft by doing more, because they can just go in there, have a look, check it out, and they come out. Make sure you count your robots and get them all back. What could we do with the Port of Savannah? What more could we do with AI if you had a self-learning optimizing system? I'll give you just a couple of thoughts. Over in Rotterdam, they're using AI in the X-ray scanning machines for every container. So instead of a 10-minute job with a person at a console looking for someone who might be smuggling cars out of the country, stolen vehicles, or smuggling in chemicals from China that could be used for narcotics, right? They're looking for those anomalies. AI is great at spotting anomalies. So it's now 3.5 seconds per container, which is faster than you can actually push the container through. So they can scan all the containers now, not a sample, all of them. Do that, the Port of Savannah, you increase the trustworthiness of the Port of Savannah, you increase the client base, economic payback. There's another system out there that I've seen where they're just sharing data, nothing more, across every service provider in the port, every shipping company, all these guys, all the freight forwarders, all that, just so that they can learn, use AI to learn, to predict more accurately arrivals, departures, when things are going to be there, just like that airport. Because if this idle time of this vessel can be reduced, it's money. That's fuel burn saved. Really, really nice stuff. And there's yet another one called Hull Skater out of Norway. It cleans the bottom of ships. Little robots, they get on there and they clean the slime off the bottom of your ship, because that's good for fuel economy as well, right? But one Hull Skater might be doing that in Savannah, And the whole skater in Sydney or Singapore or another port like Rotterdam will also know the shape of that ship's bottom once it's learned, just like a Roomba vacuum cleaner learns your room layout in your house and does a quicker job over there than here. All right, now let's turn to the dark stuff for a minute. And I just do a quick time check as to where I'm at. All right, good. I'm on time. I have to talk a little bit about the dark stuff because I know the questions that are going to come at the end of this presentation. I've done this for a while. There are significant threats with AI. And when you talk about hive minds and swarms and AIs that talk to AIs, I know what's in your head. And what's in your head is something like Skynet, right? That. We all watch Terminator. We can talk more after my presentation about this, but I don't want you to worry about Skynet at all. I don't worry about it at all, and I get involved with all of this stuff. The issue with the idea that we would have an AI that wants to destroy us all, which is the foundation of this movie, and it's a great movie, right? Terminator. The issue with that is that there is no correlation between intelligence and malevolence, okay? The more intelligent you are doesn't mean you want to kill more. That's the first issue. The second issue is agency. We don't tend to give AIs agency over things which kill us. Now, that vehicle example I showed you before, there's no future scenario in which there aren't humans in the loop that can actually stop traffic or intervene. Even Japanese trains, which are highly, highly automated today, there are humans in the loop. If I go to a missile command center in the United States, and I have done so in North Dakota, and go and take photos of the button, right, and actually talk to them about procedures and how this works historically and today, there are humans at all sorts of levels in that loop because that terrifies us. We are all in this room conscious of that. We are terrified of that. We are not dumb and don't react. We react to this stuff. Even nasty dictators in North Korea want to have control of their nukes. They do not cede control. Don't worry about that. There is a much greater danger that no one talks about. I feel like I'm the only person in the world that talks about it. And I really believe this is a much, much more significant danger. And that's not this movie. If you want to watch the right movie, watch this one for fun and watch this one to scare yourself. Anyone ever, show of hands, anyone saw Her with Joaquin Phoenix? It is a beautiful, soulful movie, beautifully done, right? About 10 years ago, I think, very prescient, about a man who falls in love with the AI in his phone. And that's Scarlett Johansson voicing the AI in his phone. I highly recommend this movie as a metaphor for the biggest threat in what's coming. We are going to love what AI does for us, and it's going to come in lots of small bites, and it's going to change our behaviours. It's going to distance us from some of our relationships because they're going to handle phone calls for us, all that kind of thing. It's going to distance us just like social media and cell phones have distanced us from reality in a process which was termed way back in the 70s, amusing ourselves to death. We're going to get more isolated from reality. That was referring to television. Well, we've gone way beyond television now with social media. This is going to extend what we've experienced a lot, right? And we are going to have truly engaging AIs. They're going to be sexualized as well. We've already seen people get extremely stressed out when sexualized chatbots have been switched off because they felt they had a relationship with it. That's already happening. Lots of documented examples of that. I'm going to call her she because Samantha is the character in Her, just for a minute, but it could be he, anything you want, but she will make you laugh and make you cry. She will know how to engage emotionally. Meta, people behind Facebook, are working very, very hard on these capabilities, right? Because it keeps you engaged, it means you stay longer, it means you buy more things, you see more ads. Everyone's working on more engagement. But she will be like a person. She will read you and understand you. You will love her and she will love you back. And 10 years from now, after losing little bits of our autonomy in 1,000 or 10,000 tiny cuts, we'll look back and go, what did we lose? We have lost something. That's the biggest threat right there. Okay. Staying on the philosophical side just for a few more minutes. A lot of people talk about AI exceeding humanity. There's various contexts for this. A lot of people talk about consciousness, conscious AIs. Consciousness is a terrible word because no one actually knows how to define it. No scientist can define it. No religious person can define it. What is consciousness? How do we test for consciousness? You can't do it. A much stronger and more practical word, so I don't know if AIs will become conscious because I don't know what it is. But what I can tell you definitively is that a lot of AIs will become equivalent in capability to us. So from the outside, as we interact with them, we will not be able to distinguish between a human capability and the AI capability, and they will exceed our capabilities, and they will certainly be indistinguishable from humans in a whole bunch of contexts. That's happening already. That's happening already. And I'll get into the computer science very briefly, but just, a quick example. A couple of weeks ago, these videos got released. Was this made by a human or an AI? An AI. With one line of text. So now you can do one text prompt and get a movie. Now that's not public, that's being released to a whole bunch of private testers because they're worried about the consequences with deep fakes. Well, they should be. What about this one? AI or human? Same thing, one line of text, show me a festival, an AI made this movie and came back. Now when you look at deep fakes, that's an issue we're dealing with right now. And if I just blank this out for a second, right now, we're dealing with fraud around the world that started off with phone calls and now video calls, where a deep fake looks so like a person, people are paying money. Okay, so there's a famous example a few years ago, an insurance company shared with me, where the CFO kept calling and saying, you've got to pay the supplier. I don't care about the paperwork, they need to be paid. And after the fourth payment, $250,000, someone smelled a rat and realized that on the phone it wasn't their CFO. Another one last year in Hong Kong, $26 million got paid out because the CFO asked for the payments to be made. Same sort of thing. I've watched a live Vladimir Putin talk to me in Russian and then in English, right, on a Zoom call. And the actual actor was over here and the Vladimir Putin, it's just done live. It's just, someone was saying, just an American was on stage over here and here was Vladimir Putin saying stuff to me. I couldn't tell the difference. We're already encountering equivalence in so many ways. In many of the services, you ring the hotel over here, Thompson Hotel, I think theirs is now a bot. You can't tell the difference. You have a full conversation with them, you get immediate service. It's very good, it's a good experience, but of course there's a downside. So equivalence is something you're encountering now and you're going to encounter it everywhere, and eventually you've got to get used to this idea. You will not be able to tell the difference. You will have a rich interpersonal conversation with AIs and you won't be able to tell the difference. And just to sort of illustrate a bit more, remember this, where we got to with here. So here's one thing that's coming, or a few things that are coming in the next few years that they're working on. All the sensors that AIs use to learn, they use standard computer chips today, but there's another generation coming where we emulate the biology of real organisms. In this case, fruit flies and mice. So the auditory connectomes, they call them, that's what the neural networks look like for fruit flies, for memory and retention, and for auditory, and that's from a mouse, that's from the retina. So we're mimicking that, and it's really important because AI uses so much electricity today. So if you're using a lot of AI on your phone, you'll drain your battery real fast. In fact, if you just use the camera on your phone. But if you replace it with what's called a neuromorphic camera, you could run your camera all year on your phone and not drain the battery. Because it's much more efficient in biology. We're very, very clever things. But we're mimicking that in hardware. So the next generation of computer hardware, slowly getting into all AIs, is called neuromorphic hardware. It's actually the most important thing going on in computer hardware today. Not many people talking about it. Much more important than quantum computing and all that sort of stuff. Other people, including one of the guys who won the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for everything going on in AI today, a guy called Jan LeCun. So here's something out of one of his papers. He's working on actual different cortices like the brain. So we have a higher order cortices in the cortex, which is called the configurator, which might have embedded in it our values. What's good, bad, evil, not evil. And it controls the lesser brain AIs, which are more instinctive in their knowledge. And it has a cost model, which can do comparisons for planning. So, for example, the Copilot we started this presentation with could say, this action might lead to a sale to Hyundai of, the insurance brokerage guy. This one might lead to another 40 hours of flailing around and sales calls. It's actually making comparisons of different actions to weight them up, something AIs don't do well today. And something that just happened last year for the first time, some people actually got the biology involved. So we grew brain cells in a petri dish. They coalesce, they form their own organism called an organoid. So they work, they fire, the synapses fire. There's a whole moral discussion about this. But they did it. They hooked it up to hardware, and they did learning by example using the brain cells. So now we've got an AI which is using brain cells as part of the system. And it did language learning, just like the baby that we started with. You're getting equivalence very quickly. Now let's end back on the happy stuff and back on the big opportunities, because they are truly, truly huge, monumental. Now we're going to go quickly through a bunch of things that I call trillion-dollar opportunities. They make me happy. They really are absolutely massive, and they really are in the trillions. So let's just do a little off-ramp with some of these for a bit of fun. A couple of kids at Stanford did a whole lot of photography of weeds and cabbages. This is a weed, that's a cabbage. This is a weed, that's a cabbage. Now we've got examples, fed into a machine, came up with some software. It's free, by the way, the tools to do this stuff. You can go and play with it today. They built a bit of software. They sold it to John Deere tractors so it could recognize through its cameras under its tractors weeds and cabbages and carrots and everything else. Sold it for $305 million. Not bad for a couple of students. And the economic value is much bigger than that, because now that tractors can understand that, they don't even need herbicide anymore. You can put a laser on there and they can just zot every weed as they come along. When you talk about taking out herbicides, you're talking about $1 trillion opportunity. Here's another one that I love, Clara fruit. One of about a dozen, using very straightforward machine learning tools, but it takes time to get this right, to learn about ripeness in fruit. Why? Because 30% of all the fruit we grow in the world, in fact, all the food we grow in the world, is wasted. And a lot of that wastage happens in transit, in warehouses, in storage. So now anybody in the whole supply chain only needs an iPhone. They all can photograph the same product from the grower onwards, when to pick the stuff, right through to the supermarket shelves. And the AI is learning to optimize that system, when to move it on, temperatures, controls, and it's all on iPhones. And if we can dig away at some of that 30%, it's $1 trillion opportunity. All those satellites you see up. A few years ago, we had 1,500 satellites total, all time, humankind. We're heading towards 40,000, then 100,000. Very quickly. Why do they matter? They matter because all these services are coming where you can throw AI at it and create a whole new business service. So you can already get a service, build it for your company, which counts cars at Walmart and Target car parks or any of your competitors. It's for competitive analytics. Another one counts containers at ports and looks at shipping movements. These are all AIs. There's another one with an infrared camera that tracks methane leaks in gas fields, so you can stop methane leaks. The sky is the limit. My favorite is in insurance, because I came up with this one in one of my talks for an insurance company. I said, in Australia, where I'm from, there's so many bushfires, and insurers want you to cut the vegetation back. So why don't you use satellite photography, give people a discount if they've cut the vegetation back away from their house. And I also like this because this is my house, and I can check whether my daughter's boyfriend is visiting, right, while I'm away. But you can see it's endless, right? When you start to combine those two, $1 trillion opportunity. Agriculture, we haven't even talked about. Voice biometrics. Everyone's used to this for security, but in healthcare, we're doing voice diagnostics. Systems that just listen to you talk and they go, you know what? Signs of Parkinson's, signs of Alzheimer's. Another one came out for tuberculosis. Really important This stuff's important in America, yes, because we're moving to home healthcare for so much health diagnostics is going to be done by Alexa and Siri and Google Home before you go anywhere near anything. And it's going to be unobtrusive. You don't have to do anything. It'll just say, you know what? I think you need a checkup because I'm worried about you. This one here at Korti, which I mentioned earlier, in Denmark, they're using this as a call centre for their 911 service, or whatever they call it. It's not 911, but in the Netherlands and Denmark. And when people ring and they say, I've got these chest pains and all the rest of it, before they even finish their first few sentences, it knows if they're having a heart attack just from the stress patterns in their voice. A light goes on for ambulances dispatched. It saves 35 seconds on the time to get an ambulance. It goes forever, right? And in Africa, where you're looking at diagnostics where one phone could make all the difference for a village, right? This stuff really matters. When it comes to designing new molecules, this is a $1 trillion opportunity, because in healthcare, the game is how do we design a medicine to interact properly with this protein in our body to cure us of a disease? Well, that shape, and actually predicting that shape from a chemical makeup, has been a problem we never could solve for 50 years. AI solved it in a couple of months. First for about 20,000 proteins, then for every protein in the human body, then for every protein known in nature, and then the people that did this gave it away for free to all medical researchers in the world so they can use it. And now you can actually say, what's the shape of the drug I want? And AI will, instead of in years, come up with a composition, you're seeing this live, for a molecule that fits the shape you want. Done. Now that, in medicine, in pharmaceutical companies, you look at the supply chain. Pharmaceutical companies, years and years of research to choose the right molecule, the right protein. Then you've got stage 1 trials, stage 2 trials, stage 3 trials, approvals through the regulatory side. Then you've got to manufacture this stuff. All of this is being cut. Instead of 10 years and $2.2 billion on average for a new drug in the top pharmaceutical companies, we're cutting 200 million, 300 million out of each one. What's it worth? Energy, you're going to hear from somebody at a power company later today. If we can just make grids 5% more efficient, just 5%, that's a $25 billion a year dividend in the United States alone. And here's one way to get 5%, apart from all the predictive stuff, doing better weather prediction. All weather prediction will be AI-driven, all of it, 100%. It's already better than humans. All of it on planet Earth will be AI, no question about it. It's already better. And two that I just want to finish with because they delight me. This is Gert van Oskum, also from the Netherlands. He fell off his motorbike, snapped his spine, paraplegic. Last year we got him walking again, these lovely scientists in Switzerland, because AI bridged the gap in his spine. We had a little chip here and a little chip here, and this chip read the signals from his brain, which said, I want to move these muscles and walk, and it decoded them, worked out what was the intentionality of each signal, and then bridged it with stimuli on this side for the muscles. And it goes the other way. He can feel where his muscles are because it's working to bridge the gap the other way. We're getting people walking again with AI. Priceless, right? And lastly, because it's so cute, every major research institution is involved in this stuff. We're learning the language of animals. We are literally in the Caribbean right now using learning by example, machine learning, to learn all of those clicks and buzzing noises that whales make to find what the meaning is. And we're going to be able to talk back to them. We're already talking back to bees. You know those little dances they do in the hive? We've got robo-bees that go back in and we can talk back and send them to look at pollen. We're communicating back for the first time. If we get just a little bit more empathy for all these other creatures we share the planet with through this, that's priceless. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes a bit of our journey into the future. But I don't want to stress you out. I want to leave you with these messages. It doesn't all happen tomorrow. It happens over years. Go back, ask some of the questions I've given you as actions, and remember that the future is not written by me or the scientists I talk to. The future of your organizations is written by you. They're your choices to make. So it's a wonderful world of opportunity ahead. I'd love to take a few questions if we've still got some time. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, let me just come off the ceiling. my thought process was iRobot all the whole time. And then you showed the picture of him, and I'm like, oh my God. But that is amazing. It is really and truly amazing. For the medical part, is the fear not just, doctors being out of work or whatever the case may be, but what about the patients, the trials and things like that? How are the responses from the patients that have the medical disabilities?
Are you speaking specifically to that person at the end with the paraplegic?
The person on the end, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So with prosthetic limbs, the patients love it. They absolutely love it, universally. And his journey is just the beginning. So a whole lot of other people are saying, how do we use AI and neuromorphic hardware, these new, more biological chips, to do things like better diabetes management, more to actually communicate with the autonomic system in the body? There are so many possibilities. And the patient's acceptance is very, very good on the prosthetic side. Yeah. So prosthetic hands that you can feel. One of the most magnificent ones out of Johns Hopkins, a prosthetic hand with what they call sensible skin. So skin that can feel if things are hot or sharp. All of those things that you and I can feel. Now imagine having that. You've lost your limb, but you can feel that again because it's learned through machine learning what the signals are that actually connect to those feelings in our brain. And it's feeding back, that bidirectional. They love it. They absolutely love it, yeah. It's a new world for them.
Yeah, just for the record, Skynet Terminator is not a threat, right?
Not a threat.
Okay, all right.
I don't lose sleep over it. Hey, we've got 12,500 nukes out there. We're a threat to ourselves.
Got it.
AI is not, yeah, we've got enough to worry about. Yeah.
So at its core, the AI really is data curation, right? I mean, it's just gathering a bunch of data and never forgets it. But inside of that data, inside of the information that it curates, there's inherent biases, especially as you think, about legal and, law enforcement and things like that, are pervasive inside of our society. What are the researchers and the innovators doing to fix and really head that off at the pass so that those social ills don't multiply into the future and affect us?
The social ills being, well, you mean like, for example, racism, sexism?
Sexism, racial biases, homophobia, the whole thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll just say it.
No, it's good. It's great question. Great question. So, first of all, I'll take you to task on the just jabbering data, the way you characterized it. One of the interesting things here is, what is intelligence? Now, if you get into Noam Chomsky's work and other things, what differentiates us is our ability to tell stories and to connect objects and outcomes together in sort of visual, symbolic stories, if you like. I would argue that we are seeing a form of our own intelligence, even in large language models. Some people say it's statistical as an outcome, but when you embody language in an artificial intelligence model, you're actually embodying what constitutes most of what makes us special. And so we've already documented, I've seen one science paper, 137 different behaviors that were unexpected out of AIs, unanticipated, because they're emergent. Now that it's got all this stuff, it's doing stuff that we never thought it could do. For example, this is a small one. Last year I watched somebody do a demo with the professional version of ChatGPT that you pay for, all this sort of stuff, GPT-4, where they dumped the US tax code into it. And then they said, do a tax return for this couple in these circumstances. And it did, and it showed it's working. And it's like, is that just jabbering? It was correct in its answer. You know what I mean? So I want to challenge you on that. When people say to you, oh, it's only statistical, it's only completing the sentence. No, it's not. It's doing much more. There's a reason that Jeff Hinton resigned from Google. He's one of the three founding fathers, Jan LeCun, Jeff Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, responsible for everything we've just seen. Three guys made it all work in 2012, right? He resigned from Google because he started to get worried. He's going, I can see a whole other layer coming. What have we done? Okay, so there was that side to it. Now, when we come to biases, so we've got gender, we've got race, we've got all kinds of biases in all kinds of systems, and especially face recognition systems, very well publicized, really bad news. They are real legitimate problems now. When I talk to computer scientists, the message I want to give you is none of them see them as unsolvable in science at all, not even the slightest. So I don't want you to think about those as the future. I want you to think about those as data set problems and litigation issues now, because there's so many people using the tools irresponsibly, teaching with poor data sets, or not curating them well, and it is very much a human usage issue. And it's a problem, it's a big problem. So I'm not invalidating that, but I just want to say there's no scientific reason why you can't blow past that and make it a lot better. So the market will decide what we use and don't use. Yeah.
So Bruce, we have time for one more quick question, and then he will be here the rest of the day, because I saw lots of hands. So
please come up one-on-one and chat to me. I know there's lots of different nuances. I'd be delighted to take any questions on anything that you like.
Yeah, great presentation. In the medical revolution, we used to talk, I feel like more than we do today, bioethics. So it's not just the can we do it, it's the should we do it?
Yes.
So out of the major players who are developing these technologies, OpenAI, X, Google, and I'm sure all the other players, what kind of conversations do you see happening between these developers on AI ethics, and what kind of conversation between these developers would you like to see happening in a collaborative effort?
What was the second bit? What kind of conversations do we have?
What kind of conversations are you seeing happening from the people who are actually developing the machine learning technology? And then conversely, what kind of conversations would you like to see happening between those developers?
Yeah, well, what I'd like, the dream would be a whole lot more collaboration and a whole lot more careful progress. Not happening, won't happen, can't possibly impose that sort of control on it. Very little cross-collaboration on ethics. You've got a lot of representation. You've got US Congress passing laws recently, and you've got about 6 of those. The EU has a particularly strong set of principles, guiding principles for AI, and they're really good, actually. They're really strong stuff, doing the best they can. But basically, it's Wild West. There are no controls. And there's no way of controlling what someone does. The tools are free. Now, a large language model is expensive to develop. What Google owns, what Meta owns, what Microsoft's running around with, it's hard for you to replicate that. But you can build off the back of it any way you wish, as I've demonstrated through that GPT store. But if you just want to take learning by example and do some machine learning and build your own AI to recognize shoppers doing something in your store or whatever, you and I can do that now, and no one can stop us. And you legislate in the US and they'll do it in China. You legislate in China, they'll do it in Russia. It is Wild West. Like so many things, the market will decide. Consumers will push back hard when they see something they don't like. That'll change the behaviors. Unfortunately, it's not a collaboration between the developers. There is none, in my view. There's real issues there because the very powerful players, look, let's put it this way. When everybody's using AI in every aspect of their job, there's a lot of money to be made, even if it's $1 a day. So there are big forces pushing to own as much of the space as they can. And because it takes a lot of effort to really train the really good ones to do that universal stuff, they're probably going to end up dominating, and we need to really rein in the big boys. And if we just do that, if we just put proper controls and back it up with action, enforcement around the Microsofts and the Googles and the Metas, that will still go an awfully long way to making the world a better and safer place. Yeah, it's a really complex discussion. I'd love to talk to you more about it and keep going. Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.